Former friend who called me a bad influence for being child-free just made a demand today that I take in his family plus 3 kids into my home. First, this ain't a post where I'm asking if I did the right thing or not. I know I did the right thing. This is a pure rant about this emotional day because if anyone's going to understand, it's you all in the child-free community. A former buddy, Jim, not his real name, who I haven't had any contact with for almost 3 years, just got in touch with me again. He claims he has a home emergency and needs to find a place for him, his wife, and 3 kids to stay while the home situation gets fixed. This is the same guy who, when I was going through something rough, told me he can't be my friend because I'd be a bad influence on his kids for being child-free. A bit of background on the reason for the friendship ending. I was in a high-stress situation and very sad. My father dying was just one of the terrible things that happened in a span of 3 months. I was looking for some comfort, and instead, Jim told me that me being a child-free man was a bad influence on their family. He had a wife plus 2 kids then. In short, they didn't want to spend time around me as I wasn't worth it when they had more valuable friends. This was someone I had known since graduate school, and had spent a lot of time doing fun stuff with, like rock climbing. Jim and I were among a group of mutual buddies that regularly rented out lake houses or winter lodges for summer and winter sports activities. We're talking 10+ years. Then to just ditch me because he thought I wasn't useful hurt a lot, especially when I was dealing with some really sad stuff. Even more so because I was there for him when he found out his mom had cancer and then was there for him at his mom's funeral. Like I said, I haven't spoken or texted him in almost 3 years. I chalked it up to people getting really weird when they have kids, that they fall into a traditional conservative mindset that anyone who isn't wanting or working toward a Leave It to Beaver 2.5 kids situation is somehow suspect. Then today, I see a text pop up on my phone from Jim. I never erased or blocked his number from my phone, so his name was still saved, and there it was. He asked me to let him and his 3 kids stay with me at my house because their water heater broke and it's kind of an emergency situation. He knows I now live in the same city as him, and it would be a really big favor. So, lots of emotions with that. Apparently, since he told me I'm a bad influence, he and his wife had a 3rd kid. His wife, Linda, always had a way of making things worse. She was the kind of woman who'd complain about free food not being fancy enough. Anyway, I guess my biggest question was, why ask me of all people? I asked Jim why he's asking me to do this for him. His response was basically that he's all out of options and that no one has the room for him and the 3 kids, especially with his 5-month-old. I asked him why he can't arrange a hotel room for them. He said that would be really expensive, and they're in a lot of medical debt already from their newest kid having to be in the NICU when he was born. I said that sounds tough, but again, why me? He said he knows I helped out someone last year with emergency housing and saw I had enough extra room for guests. Since I was so generous back then, I could be generous with him now. I knew exactly what he was talking about, but I really wanted to know how that situation was delicate, and I thought a private family matter. He said it was posted on Facebook by the couple I helped. About this time last year, one of my good college friends, Jenny, who has lupus, got COVID-19. She was being so careful, too. It sucked because this was before the vaccines rolled out for vulnerable people. She is my age, mid-30s, and very healthy aside from lupus. She's a marathon runner, actually. Jenny's lupus ended up making COVID even worse, and she ended up in the ICU. On top of that, she was pregnant, and her husband had to make the decision to save her life over the fetus. Basically, it was either giving life-saving medicine and care to Jenny at the expense of her fetus or she dies. Thankfully, he's a good guy and let the doctors end the pregnancy to save her life. Jenny's mother was a real piece of work and said that her daughter should have died with the baby. She said, Jenny's life is not worth much anymore, and even tried to bring in a priest to try to give her last rites. Jenny was in a coma at the time. This caused a huge dramatic fallout, as you would imagine. Jenny's brother and his wife needed a place to stay away from their mother immediately. I had an extra room and am an easy distance from the hospital, They stayed with me for 2 days until they locked down a hotel room in one of those long-term residence hotels. No one was sure Jenny was going to make it out alive, so they understandably wanted to be nearby. They lived out of state and were staying with the terrible mother while their sister was in the hospital. Thankfully, Jenny made it out alive and has since disowned her mother. She actually remembers, while in the coma, people talking about the priest trying to break in. I let the brother and his wife into my home because these people were good people, have always been supportive, and still are some of the most gracious people I know. Apparently, unbeknownst to me because I'm not on Facebook, either Jenny's brother or his wife posted something about how much of a decent person I was to help them out in a dire moment of need and a light during a very dark period for them. They told me as much to my face. I just didn't know that they shared the situation on social media. So back to today. Jim saw that stuff last year, kept it in his head, and thought I would let his family and kids into my home with open arms. Frankly, I told him to shove it. I was pissed he was trying to guilt me into letting him and his family into my house for an unspecified amount of time. He knows I'm child-free. Hell, he even said me being child-free is a bad influence on his family, yet all of a sudden, when it's convenient for him, I'm magically not a bad influence, and he should be able to waltz back into my life without even a single apology for the nasty things he said 3 years ago. I told him being child-free means I don't want kids in my house for an extended period of time. If I did, I wouldn't be child-free. I was not going to disrupt my life and my 2 cats to be a bed and breakfast for his 3 kids. He said I was selfish and to think of his kids, that there's no hot water in his house. I told him tough, that he can whip out a credit card or get one of his relatives to cover a hotel stay. He gave me more excuses, brought up their medical debt again, and said it'll only be for a few days. I said that multiple days for a broken hot water heater sounds extremely suspect. Stuff like that can be fixed relatively quickly. I know residency laws in our state, and if someone stays 7 days in someone's home, then they can claim tenants' rights. I was not about to risk this turning into a thing where I can't get rid of them. He told me off, and then said he will blast me all over social media, and to all my friends that I won't help a family of 3 in an emergency, that I want little kids to suffer. I told him to pound sand and eat a dick. He hasn't been a friend for years. He doesn't even know my address. All he knows is that I live seemingly close in the same city and that I live alone. He can blast me on social media all he wants. I'm not on Facebook, so I don't give a single fuck what the gaggle of Karens think of me. I told him social media isn't real life. If he does actually share this with my actual friends, they'd laugh right in his face. I told him I have all his texts for proof of the way he spoke to me and how he's a big asshole. I told him he used to be a decent guy, that we had a lot of nice times together, that I'm still sorry about his mom, and I am sorry that he went down this path in life since it sounds like he must be really miserable. But he's a bad influence in my life, so I just can't have him around. I'm sure he'll understand since he said the same about me. That was the gist of the last thing I said. He went off until I blocked him. I'm really sad about it. He really used to be a decent person back 10 years ago, and his mom was a lovely woman. I'm now bracing myself against flying monkeys who may come out of the woodwork and try to guilt me into taking in his family. Can't wait to tell them to take in his family themselves. I already talked about the situation with my 2 best friends, and they both were shocked that Jim was so brazen and had no shame. They thought it was suspect that he was so pushy about getting into my home and for days. One friend said that her water heater broke recently, and she had a plumber come out the same day. It only took a day for it to be fixed. Being against the hotel idea was a red flag to them. They are curious what the whole story is. I agreed that it feels like it's missing something. I do feel a righteousness about all this. I know I did the right thing. I hate that a previous kindness was used as a weapon against me. Years ago, I thought maybe he had a point, that I was somehow not good enough because I was pretty depressed, like people don't want sad people around. Now, with clarity, I see that he had a profoundly bad character, but it did reopen old memories, sad memories. Anyway, thanks for reading if you made it all the way through this. I had to get this off my chest and vent. Former buddy who called me a bad influence on his family now wants me to house his family. Well, I'm happy and a little surprised most things have resolved a little more than 24 hours after they started. I guess this is the benefit of people working on your behalf behind the scenes. I also wanted to thank all of those who engaged in the last post. I appreciate the support and knew you'd understand my venting. RIP the inbox, but I did read everything, and you all are the best Reddit community. Not a single troll, which I think might be a Reddit miracle. So, on to the update. I'm writing this with a pot of hot tea and recommend you do the same. This is going to be long. Well, all of your guts were right. A broken water heater making a family of 5 need alternative housing was fishy, especially since Jim doesn't even have a water heater. It was all a lie. Cue all of you going, I knew it. So here's the deal. Jim sold his house 6 months ago, and he and his wife Linda have been trying to buy a bigger home ever since. Right now, as I type this, they're already in a hotel with their kids. They have plenty of hot water. I can imagine all of you nodding your heads up and down saying, Yep, I knew it. You guys wanted an update because the water heater excuse sounded fishy. So here it is. Seriously, get yourself some tea. My sister is in another time zone and has a few hours on me. She apparently has been working on finding out about Jim. Her husband used to moonlight as a PI in grad school, and she has a natural ability for finding details about people. She's a little creep in a good way. She also has a social media presence, whereas I do not. I gave her Jim's full real name and things I knew about him, like an address I had for him and the names of his wife and the 2 kids I know. She went to town. She told me that his home went on the market about 6 months ago and sold pretty quickly for a ton more than what it was bought for years ago. It's a seller's market, and it was a huge sale. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. She then said that she looked around in the city and surrounding towns and couldn't find him buying any other property. It looked like his house sold for dollars, but that's it. So I then texted my 2 friends from yesterday. I told them what my sister found, that it looks like Jim sold his house and doesn't actually have a water heater problem because he doesn't have a water heater. My friends were like, WTF? So one of the 2 friends, Allison, got in touch with my sister, and they went on a social media deep dive. My sister was very worried I was being conned. Allison was a grad school mate along with me and Jim 10+ years ago. She was never super close with him, and he wasn't on her radar, but she was among his Facebook friends. I guess thanks goes out to people Facebook friending literally everybody they even slightly know. About the same time, I heard back from Jenny's brother and sister-in-law who stayed with me back when Jenny was in the hospital. It was Jenny's sister-in-law, Sarah, who posted about being thankful for my generosity on Facebook. She confirmed she had posted a couple of pictures. They were of my cat, who was looking like she was laying down the house rules, and one of my big plants, a Monstera deliciosa, because she loved them. The thing was that you could extrapolate things about the home. Tidy, a large kitchen, nice pantry, this will be relevant. I filled her in about what was going on, and she was mortified that she might have been partly at fault for why Jim wanted to get into my house. She took down the post, untagging my name, and showed me a screen capture verifying she did so, and asked if she could help with anything else. I told her my sister is apparently doing a deep dive, and maybe could use help. I put Sarah in contact with my sister. Sarah apparently also got in contact with Allison seemingly randomly. And late in the morning I was asked by Allison for screen grabs of the precise point in the text conversation where Jim says his emergency is about the water heater, and it's why he needs me to do him a favor and take in his family/kids for a few days. I gave it to her, and it was radio silence for most of the day. I thought, I wondered what was going on. So in the early evening I got a lot more of the story. I got texts from my sister, Allison, and Sarah. I'm going to try and bullet point it. It's a bit circuitous. Jim and his wife Linda did sell their house 6 months ago. They wanted more room and bedrooms for their now 3 kids and wanted to upgrade. It being a huge and wild seller's market, their home was estimated to have accrued high 6 figures in equity since they bought it. They were excited to put it on the market. Jim and his wife wanted to get top dollar for the house, so they sold it without a contingency that they first needed to buy a home before the buyer could move in and officially take the house. Jim was convinced with the huge sale that they could get another one quickly. Their house was sold fast, and there was a bidding war. Jim bragged about it. Jim and Linda went about trying to buy another home, except it wasn't easy at all. All the homes they put a bid on went to someone else who outbid them. Time came for the new buyers to take over the house, and they had to move out. Jim and Linda didn't think this was that big of a deal. A friend of theirs took them in with the understanding that it would be temporary and they would actively be buying a house, which Jim and Linda were doing, but they still were being outbid. They refused to lower expectations or adjust their budget. They would not look at homes that were the same size as their old one because the whole reason for selling was to get a bigger home. They couldn't win any of the bidding wars. Jim refused to increase the budget. Their third kid was born premature and was in the NICU, so they do actually have medical debt. He doesn't want to spend anything more or take out more loans. So Jim, Linda, and the three kids go to someone else's place to stay. They continue to look for homes and can't get one. This repeats now to a third person's home. At this point, people are trying to tell him that maybe it's a good option to wait out the housing bubble when it's not such a seller's market and get an apartment in the meantime. Jim shoots this down because an apartment costs money akin to a mortgage. If he's going to pay for living accommodations per month, it better be a mortgage. He thinks paying for an apartment is a money drain. Linda is even more angry at the suggestion. She doesn't want to be in an apartment that will be smaller than their old home. Jim's family seems to be overstaying their welcome. People are getting annoyed. Jim and Linda are not willing to chip in for groceries. Jim's family is now on the fourth place of people willing to take them in. A month ago is when they ran out of options for free housing. Hilariously, they were all run out because people needed the room for their own family coming for the holidays. No one wants to take the freeloaders in anymore. Linda is a school teacher in the city, and because of that and the kids being back in school, they really need to stay in the city. But their only other options now for free housing are Jim's brother, who lives about 2 hours away, and Linda's parents, who live 6 hours away. Neither option is good for Jim and Linda's jobs or their kids getting to in-person classes. So Jim and his family needed housing ASAP and booked a hotel. They're really upset about it because their kids are loud, and the hotel staff is harping on them to be quieter. Jim and Linda complain how they hate living out of a hotel, how it is unfair they can't get a house with all the money they have. To be clear, they have more than enough money to skate on living in a hotel, which is still way pricier than renting an apartment. Jim likes the idea of the hotel because it's not signing a lease. They can leave any time, and they have maid service. Linda goes all poor me because she says that the kids are so sad they don't have a backyard to play in. Being in a hotel doesn't let the kids be kids. Slight segue. Allison goes back in Linda's posts and finds a situation in which she and a gaggle of her friends are talking not so nicely about me. It's a situation that happened at the start of the pandemic. It was back when people were freaking out and started buying out all the toilet paper. People also bought a lot of foodstuffs before it could be restocked because of panic buying. A person I used to go to grad school with and was friends with got in touch with me to ask how I was holding up. I thought she was contacting me to offer support and be nice. Her motivation was to get me to give her my food. I've had a chest freezer and a well-stocked pantry for a long time. Having a working pantry is something that got passed to me from my grandma, who survived World War II. My mom did it, and now I do it too. Well, this friend who was seemingly sweet to me knows I have a decent amount of food. She said she needs me to give her some of my food because I don't have any kids to feed. She said her kid is a picky eater and I probably have a bunch of frozen chicken to spare. I was impressed by the audacity and told her that if she was desperate for food, there is a food bank to go to. I'm not going to just give her my food because her son is picky and only eats her homemade chicken nuggets. It's not a food shortage, it's panic buying. If she just gets to the grocery store early in the morning midweek when they typically restock, she'll easily get chicken. She told me I'm selfish. Apparently, she took this to social media to talk behind my back with others who were spouses of grad school friends. Back to Linda's posts. Linda supports the woman who tried to get me to give her my frozen chicken. Linda also considers me selfish for not helping a mother out. She says it's really weird for me to keep so much food around when it's only me, that I obviously have problems. If you guessed that "you're a bad influence" must have been a seed planted by Jim's wife, I think you are correct. When Sarah posted about my generosity in letting them stay a couple of days before they found a long-term hotel situation while Jenny was hospitalized, there were some comments made by Linda about how nice it was for me to do that, sweet as can be, and that my home looked amazing. This web of friendships is seemingly complex, but basically, it's a lot of people who know each other from grad school. Grad school was tough, and we all let off steam by organizing vacations before most of us were married or had kids yet. I always invited my close college friends who stayed in the state to the group vacations where we'd all pitch in and rent out lake houses or cabins at ski resorts. Again, recent posts have Linda going all poor me because she says that the kids are so sad they don't have a backyard to play in, how being in a hotel doesn't let the kids be kids. Then there is a weird Linda post 2 days ago that sounds like her family has found a place that's so cute and her kids will be able to get out of the hotel situation. She says it has a great kitchen for her kids. Cue Jim texting me yesterday, asking me after no contact for 3 years that he has a broken water heater and needs me to take in his family for a few days while it gets fixed. Obviously, you all know I told him no. Well, my friends see that Jim and Linda have made some passive-aggressive comments on social media this morning about how society is terrible nowadays when friends renege on their offer of helping families with kids out of a tough situation. Linda says her cute home situation fell through and she gets a bunch of sympathy from her Karen friends. She says her kids are so disappointed. I think this is probably when Allison asked for my screen grabs of Jim's water heater sob story. Allison goes on a tear and posts. Linda shares the screen grabs of Jim's water heater lie. She and Sarah start calling them out. They share the truth that Jim and Linda did not have a new housing situation lined up. They were trying to get into my home by lying about a broken water heater that I had never agreed to having them stay in my home. Sarah called them huge assholes for trying to take advantage of me. Allison went off about the situation from 3 years ago. My real friends, like Allison, were very much there for me, while people like Jim were like, "Yeah, I don't care, plus you're a bad influence on my family." Allison let everyone know about Jim calling me a bad influence on his family for my child-free lifestyle and how he's pathetic, thinking he can walk back into someone's life who he insulted. Allison is also child-free herself. People told off Jim for being super mean and now wanting favors. It apparently snowballed into people calling him super cheap and a leech. The people who let his family stay with them during the last 6 months came out of the woodwork to lay into him. One person described how dirty Jim's family was and how it was insane how much extra cleaning they had to do, that his kids had no manners, they terrorized their dogs, and it was awesome when they finally left. People expressed anger that they were trying to pull one on me and then try to make me out to be the bad guy on social media. There were people I hadn't talked to in a long time who told him that I was a good person, how I helped them in grad school for random things, and didn't deserve this. It was really nice to hear. Some related how I've helped people get jobs, something more than Jim has ever done. I'm very involved in the grad school networking community, and I like sharing job opportunities and wisdom about finding scientific jobs and mentoring. Jim's own brother said he was disgusted by this behavior. He remembered how much I helped when their mom passed away. He said their mom would be rolling in her grave as she knew how he was treating people. My sister ended up getting me to Zoom with her and screen shared her monitor to show me what the hoopla looked like. Maybe this is why I never actually got a single message from anyone about not letting a family into my home. I was expecting flying monkeys. I never got them. My God, the schadenfreude. Jim told me he was going to put me on blast on Facebook and ended up getting blasted himself. How stupid, how incredibly stupid. I had the text of him lying about the goddamned water heater. He must have thought since I wasn't on social media that I'd never be able to tell others he was lying about a water heater or know that he was currently enjoying hot hotel water. I feel like I dodged a nuclear-tipped missile. I had to pour myself a drink after work and really think about all this. After thinking about it and considering all the context, I believe Jim and Linda were going to try and squat in my home. He did go off when I mentioned the 7-day rule when people get tenants' rights in our state. I knew it was fishy. You all called it too. I'm thinking he was a cheap bastard who didn't want to pay more money for a hotel. He still didn't want to find an apartment. He had exhausted all in-city free housing opportunities with friends. I was a last-ditch effort. His wife peripherally knew I was amenable to guests. She also knew my home was nice, and that I had a ton of food for her kids to eat. They had a reputation already for eating people out of house and home. If they stayed with me for a week, they'd be tenants, and I'd have to spend time kicking them out with the courts, as it probably would have taken months to evict them. Much easier to run a scam on a single person and push them out of their own home than try to do the same thing with his real friends who already have kids and not a lot of ample space. He was only looking for free housing, so he'd be able to put every penny he had into his goal of buying a 4+ bedroom house with all the money he got in the sale of his old home. I don't know for certain, but it makes sense. So I decided to send him one last text. I unblocked him and sent him this before reblocking his number. Hey Jim, so I found out you were lying about that water heater. You don't even have a water heater. You're living in a hotel along with sitting on a huge pile of cash from selling your old home. I think it's real shitty of you for lying to me and trying to get into my home to leech off me, especially because you destroyed our friendship when you called me a bad influence on your family. I didn't tell you back then, but I'm telling you now that you are trash. Your mom would be ashamed of you. I see it's all projection because you are the bad influence not only on my life, but on the lives of others. If you really believed I was a bad influence, you never would have tried to get your family into my home this week. But if you still think I'm some sort of bad influence, then you won't have to worry about me helping you out or granting any sort of favor in the future. I'm going to keep my bad influence far away from your family. Oh, and Linda sounds like she's become a real treat. The last thing I will do for you, because I'm not a monster, is to say that you need to do your duty as a husband and father and pay to get a stable apartment for your family. Stop playing these freeloader games. Here's a link to our local Craigslist housing page. I'm sure you'll find something. Oh, and hope to see you at the next non-Zoom alumni event. I'm sure it'll be great to catch up in person. So it's done. I said my piece. Once again, you all were right that something else was going on. I feel really sick right now thinking about how someone could do this to me. Also, feeling kind of sick thinking about the idea of letting them into my home. That would have been a nightmare. So it's done. I said my piece. Once again, you all were right that something else was going on. I feel really sick right now thinking about how someone could do this to me. Also feeling kind of sick thinking about the idea of letting them into my home. That would have been a nightmare. But here's the kicker. After I sent that final text to Jim, things escalated quickly. Within a couple of hours, my phone was buzzing non-stop with messages from people who had seen the whole drama unfold on social media. Seems like Jim and Linda had tried to spin their sob story, but it backfired big time. Folks from our grad school days started chiming in, sharing their own stories about Jim and Linda's freeloading antics. One guy, Mark, mentioned how he let Jim crash at his place for a week and ended up having to replace a bunch of stuff that Jim's kids broke. Another friend, Lisa, said Linda had once demanded that she babysit for free while she went to a spa to relax because being a mom was just so hard. People were coming out of the woodwork with stories about how entitled and rude Linda was. She had a knack for turning every favor into an obligation. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. And honestly, I couldn't look away. And then the cherry on top, Linda's own sister Marie chimed in. She didn't hold back. She called Linda a manipulative, freeloading brat and said she had cut ties with her years ago because Linda had a habit of taking advantage of everyone around her. Marie even mentioned that Jim and Linda had tried to move in with her once, but she put her foot down after just 1 week of dealing with their nonsense. All of this drama unfolding made me realize just how lucky I was to have dodged this bullet. My friends, the real ones, rallied around me. They were supportive and even started joking about how I should write a book about all the crazy stuff Jim and Linda had pulled over the years. We all agreed that it was time to put this chapter behind us and move on. In the end, I blocked Jim and Linda on every platform I could think of. I didn't need their negativity in my life. I decided to focus on the positive. The friends who had my back, the peaceful life I'd built for myself, and my 2 adorable cats who were far better company than any freeloaders could ever be. So if there's a moral to this story, it's this. Don't let toxic people back into your life, no matter how desperate they seem. Some folks are just looking for the next person to take advantage of, and you don't have to be their victim. Stand your ground, know your worth, and surround yourself with people who respect and appreciate you for who you are. Thanks for sticking with me through this rant, and I hope my experience can help someone else out there avoid the same pitfalls. Take care, everyone, and remember, your home is your sanctuary. Keep it safe from those who would exploit your kindness.